The Battle of Britain is about to begin.
We got tanks up there. Let's follow a range on Detroit. I'm coming out of that organ target right now. I've got a couple of these right in front of me. I'm going out there. Right there, got him.
Welcome back to the Lead Pursuit Podcast. Holy crap, this is episode 40. Yeah, 40. Nobody has yanked us yet. They haven't said, who gave these idiots the microphone? And more importantly, Warlord hasn't said, they let these guys talk about our game and talk like they know what they're doing? What a bunch of morons. Well, we're back and I've got Brett. How you doing, Brett?
I'm good. Happy to be here.
Got Chris on as well.
What's up, man?
Yeah, so we put the team back together. It is good to talk to you guys. I mean, not like I didn't just see you a few weeks ago or whatever it was before we took a break from podcasting, threw our hands in the air and said, I'm just going to light my hair on fire and catch coronavirus or whatever you do in Florida these days. But we had a good time playing some Malta games, playing a little bit of Phantom Leader after you left there, Chris. You missed out on that. And just trying to get some good aerial gaming in. Did you guys at least have a little bit of fun during that time?
Heck yeah.
Dude, I had a ball. That Malta map was the shiznit. And the whole freaking trip was worth putting a torpedo into a boat that never sank. But I torpedoed something.
Exactly.
I torpedoed something with my Steve Toth edition SM-79.
Oh, don't inflate his ego. Don't tell him how wonderful they are.
Hey,
they were horrible. They were terrible.
Steve needs all the ego inflation he can get after his Wally World freaking moment of driving to the National Mall to the freaking Air and Space Museum. Did you see that one the other day?
Yeah.
And there's a sign saying it's closed. And then everybody started posting those clips. Hey, sorry, folks, park's closed. Who should have told you?
Yeah, exactly. There's no love for your buddies at that point. Now I got to say, so we got to get out there and rub salt in the wound, because he had the Wally World moment of, hey, Moose out front should have told you it's closed. Where did you just go?
I just went to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and it was not closed. And I highly encourage everybody, because of all the COVID whiners that are freaking curled up in their houses acting like they're going to die if they go out and get a piece of fresh air. The hangars, I think there was 200 to 300 people in all 6 of the hangars at any one given time. It was a ghost town. You just move around, do whatever you want to. You had to wear a mask, but that was no big deal. Kind of gotten used to that. It was amazing. I mean, it was, the displays are just, it is a first-rate, top-shelf aviation museum.
Man, some of those pictures you were sending, I was getting so mad. I was so jealous.
Dude, the fact that they have a 30, the 30 from the 262, and it's cut in half, like with a plasma torch. So you get a cross-section of the whole shell loading system and how it all worked. For guys that are not a fan of the Rough Ride card, you need to go to the museum and see the 2 cockpits. They have the cockpits side by side and realize that one is a Cadillac DeVille and the other one is a Yugo. And there's a reason why it beat the crap out of you.
Don't go calling our MiG pilot buddies Yugo drivers. I mean, come on. We got to have at least some standard and semblance here. Come on.
I'm just telling you, those guys were balls of steel to strap themselves to a rocket engine in what was little more than a Walmart chair.
Yeah. Well, we argued about it a lot. I don't want to go back into the Vietnam playtesting discussion, but a lot of people had a lot of heartburn over some of the stuff we were talking about when you take a cockpit like a MiGs and you cram in a radar, you cram in a gun sight, and you cram in radar warning receivers and all kinds of other crap all on top of each other. And pretty soon you're looking at about a 3-inch slit above the top of all that stuff. Not exactly the best system to go fight an air-to-air combat with. But hey, at least you had a good time. You got to see the museum. Yep.
It was
you didn't
amazing.
lick any doorknobs, did you? So we don't have to worry about isolating you. Okay.
How cool was the B-52? You saw Command Decision?
Yeah, well, the Command Decision, it's only the fuselage. And I was really bummed because they have several things there that you're supposed to be able to walk through. And that was the whole thing with Command Decision. It was all like a walk-through viewing where you went in one side and you came out the other, and you were able to see the entire inside of the airplane. But everything that you could walk through was closed. That was the only thing that was a bummer about the museum. But
because of window lickers like you.
Exactly. Exactly. So, and actually probably my wife, who would been in there with a screwdriver trying to take a piece of every airplane with her.
Yeah, no, DCMA cannot foist that off on us as new equipment. They can't make us take that stuff. I don't trust those people.
I was telling Brett that the experimental, which is the last wing of the museum, it's all the experimental aircraft that we've built over the years. And they had a Goblin there, which is, I've seen pictures of it before, and I just thought it was one of the weirdest funkiest little airplanes that somebody would climb in that and go fly around the sky. It was just amazing. But it's straight up dust. I mean, it's like you're like witnessing.
It is. Yeah, you could
airplane.
take anything out of that wing and like paint it green and slap decals on it, and it would fit into Dust 1947.
Yes, it would.
Okay, well, let's talk about Malta a little bit. So, yeah, you guys had fun beating up on me, and it was a good game. It was frustrating because you tothed me. I mean, you flew your laden bombers all the way around the outside. Unlike, manly Brett there, who decided to fight his way through the heavy flak,
Brett went for the hey diddle diddle up the middle.
Yeah, hey, Brett, how'd that work out for you, rolling your one die in your dive attack?
Yeah, well, I can say that torpedoes do the Lord's work, but none of my bombers were equipped with torpedoes.
So your dive bombers are your level bombers, your Ju-87s and your Ju-88s. Yeah, they were awesome at 1 or 2 dice a piece and no successes.
After seeing the effectiveness of torpedoes, torpedo shackles are way underpriced.
Well, so that was kind of the funny thing going through this is it made perfect sense on the SM-79. I'm like, yeah, this aircraft, we're playing an older SM-79, putting the torpedo shackles, so it's going to be a little bit slower, trade-off for the capability. It all makes sense. But then you have that moment that you're like, holy crap, I could actually put this on anything. And I've got 6 high-performing single-engine airplanes all shooting torpedoes, and that's not how a torpedo bomber worked.
Yeah. It was pretty sick. And I the only way I had to get at you was to fly them up the middle, because I knew the second I put them on the table, I knew that the high cover freaking Spitfires were going to be in my Wheaties. And you were able to, it was kind of like that Death Star scene where you're coming down the trench and everybody's kind of trying to work themselves to the point where they can fire the photon torpedo. And at the same time, everybody is pieces of your freaking squadron are flying off around you. Yeah, that was definitely what it was like. Well, I don't think I had much left after the run. You
only lost 1 of 3 bombers. The other one was on 1 engine by the time it launched its torpedo 1 out of 3. So not bad there. And then, I thought it was really interesting because I hadn't math hammered it beforehand. And had I thought about it, I would never have gone for Brett's Ju-87s because they truly were like 1 die each. In the dive attack. And I should have gone, let them do it. They can do whatever they want against this cruiser that's out there because they're not going to get, percentage-wise, they're not my threat.
No. But it was, they might have been decent against one of the typical ground targets like a truck column or tanks or
even against an unarmored merchantman. Just the fact that when you have ships that are already out there maneuvering, so they're cutting your level and your dive bombing dice down, and then they're armored, so your strafing is losing at least a die there. Those kind of ships, just they're made for torpedo bombers. That's what you want to use, and so that was a good scene to see. It was funny though for both of us, actually for all of us. When you need the dice to work, they don't. So it was funny how many skill 4. High firepower shots I had at you playing cards to increase the number of firepower dice, and I still rolled no success. And I'm like, really?
That was my shooting attacks all day.
Yep.
All day. Finally get the drop on somebody, and it's like,
yep. But that's how the game goes. You got to be used to be prepared for the dice to go cold. Brett, what did you think of the attacks? Even though your poor Stukas flew all the way down there for little to no effect.
Yeah, I didn't have any great expectation that they would do much, but I guess they served their purpose in being a bit of a distraction. But it was fun. I really wanted to fly them just because I hadn't done the dive bombing action yet, so that was kind of cool. It gave me an appreciation for the Ju-88 that even though they weren't big in this particular mission, I could see that in a different scenario, maybe with different type target.
Well, if you were going for a ship that's going to, have your dice and then remove another half of them. So I think you went from, I'd have to do the quick math in public, like 5 attack dice down to 2 or something like that.
Yeah, it was 2. It was
by the time
painful.
we were down there. Yeah.
Well,
so
and the A's had they have 1 forward firepower, if I'm not mistaken, and they've got the
absolutely.
2+1 rear. So I mean, they could be fairly formidable if you had maybe a typical scenario 7 with 2 elements of 3, and you've got fighters trying to interdict them. I mean, they might make it painful for your opponent.
Yeah, I think they definitely have their place, and I like them at least in a larger kind of scenario where you're hitting big fixed targets. I like those aircraft. The only thing I don't like about the Scenario 7, as we all laughed at the start of it, was the cheese of splitting up your fighter elements to get more bombers. And I'm like, but what penalty does that give you? And now you guys were bringing 3 elements of bombers. I've got 6 multi-engine bombers and 6 single-engine bombers. By the time I'm done, I'm like, oh, this is going to be awesome.
Oh yeah, and then you had all the fighters to deal with at the same time. I mean,
well, which is
what
kind of
made it
funny.
easier on me.
So I was thinking through that on some of the tactics, and obviously shouldn't have sent the Spitfire 5s to race up the board to try to engage you further away, because it really didn't matter. The joke of it was, it really didn't matter trying to shoot down any of the bombers early, and obviously I concentrated on the wrong ones, concentrated on Stukas initially. But the funny part of it is, I kind of, looking back at it, should have just made you come to me and just had my Spitfire 5s orbit about 10 inches away, right about where the edge of the clouds were, and start trying to pick bombers off, because it took multiple turns to get into that firing position, especially after hitting the clouds.
It's kind of like, when you hold troops in reserve in freaking Warhammer, especially in Heresy, and you bring them in late and then they don't do any work. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
just the points, they become a point sink because the fact that they're just not on the board shooting something. And you've really got to freaking gauge that point.
Yeah, but I'll be honest. If I had put the Hurricanes on the board, I think both would have been boomed out. I think it wouldn't have just been the Spitfires that got boomed out. I think both of them would have been boomed out, or been close, and I would have had fewer fighters to shoot your torpedo bombers with, instead of having a full echelon of 6 Hurricanes hammering at you from when you jumped off the board, which brings up an interesting point that thankfully I caught before I deployed my guys. But there's a real temptation that as soon as you fly onto the board, to immediately put that high cover behind you and to immediately jump on the board as the Hurricanes. But I needed to let you fly forward for actually 2 turns so that I could jump on the board, be able to attack you at a slow enough speed where I'd get 2 shots or maybe even 3 at you as you're heading towards the target.
Yeah, that was the painful part too, because the target was so close to the board edge. So you had the fact that you were overtaking something that was slow, that you did only have those precious 2 freaking attacks before you were going to blow past.
Yeah. It's it's weird. And like I said when we discussed it with Andy during Gathering of Eagles, during the virtual one, I understand why he did it that way, so people don't have to fight their way through everything just to get to the target. But especially if you were on a smaller board like a 3x3, holy crap, those bombers will come out of high cover off that board edge, and in about 2 turns they're already at their attack.
Yeah, so I don't know how playing a ground strike mission on a 3x3 would go. I think
I can't imagine it would.
That would just be
eye
pain. That would just be pain.
Yeah,
for the person that's trying to defend. So if the other person's got a couple elements and you're just wise about your positioning, that would just be pain.
Well, I think Brett saw it. There comes a point that even on a 4x4 with a single target and this number of forces, it's a traffic jam, and there's too many airplanes for what we're trying to do.
Yeah, it didn't help with all those Stukas. 6 Stukas followed by 3 more Ju-88s, all in this, heading in the same track right to the target. That was a lot of planes, just in bombers, not including the 79s. That's a lot.
It was hilarious. We were playing on an 8x4, and we basically played on a 3x3 in the corner.
Yeah, we did. We pretty much ended up on the corner 3x3 by the time it was all done.
As soon as you put that single target down, I was like, okay, that's where we're all going.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the other interesting things, as Brett will talk about with campaigns and some other things, is deciding, do you go for 1 target, do you go for 2 targets? Because, I think there probably is another clause that ought to be in there. And it's always hard to make this mandatory, but it's one of those things people should think about, that if you start ending up with, 6, 12, 6, 9, 12, bombers out there, you probably need 2 targets. Not necessarily so much that you're going to try to keep the defender from losing the game, but just so everybody doesn't end up in the same
Yeah, just so you
9-inch
don't
circle.
So you don't end up with a circle jerk knot right there in the middle.
Yeah, exactly. Which may be what Brett's guys wanted, was a big circle jerk, but I that's not what I was looking for.
They are German.
Two things that stand out for me as I think back on that game. One was just how awesome all the planes looked on the mat. Everything was painted and the mat looks cool. So that was fun. That was, visually it was very satisfying. But also had the Malta story playing in the background with Alec Guinness and everything. And there was that moment that was completely coincidental when you took the video and you were panning around the action on the table right when there was the big scene of all this dogfighting or something going on. So there's all this, sound effect in the background that sounded like we planned. That was
that was pretty funny. Although watching that movie was painful because you're like, oh my God, this is such campy acting. This is horrible. But it's what it was for the time, with Sir Alec Guinness being the lone recce pilot. I don't go shoot people down. I'm a recce pilot. Yeah, whatever. But no, that was definitely good. I think the map looked awesome. I think everything was a lot of fun. I think what it at least showed me is there's still a lot to airstrike that people need to figure out before they go, airstrike is awesome or airstrike sucks. There's just a lot of things that you have to do to make sure you make the game fun. But that's the way the other scenarios are, because if you just keep playing them out of the book the same way every time, it's going to get old, or you're just going to get tired of getting beat with a certain kind of airframe.
That's, I know I've been ringing this bell a lot, but that's the one thing I am really happy about with this campaign that I'm playing with Steve, is that we get so many reps in playing different missions, different scenarios, and they're always different. Even when we play the same scenario back to back, it's a totally different game. I mean, the way things end up laying out, it's different. So I agree with you. I don't think you can just play a couple of games and go, yeah, I feel strongly this way about this. It is, I feel like it's got a lot of depth and a lot of richness and a lot of variety. And even without changing any of the conditions in any single scenario, and a lot of the scenarios have wildly different scenarios or wildly different conditions and alternate things that you can do. But even if you don't exploit all that, you're still going to have a much different game each time you play, in my opinion, so far.
Well, and there's something to be said for knowing the victory conditions cold, because there are slight amount of points differences between some of the squad or some of the scenarios as to what a defender counts for or what a multi-engine attacker counts for. And so you really have to kind of prioritize it, because there was a point in there where it didn't matter if I shot down the entire torpedo wing. There was no way I was going to get back the points that you gained by shooting down a whopping 2 defending airplanes, but putting 2 torpedo hits on the cruiser. So it was kind of interesting to see how I had to rack back up the points as the defender. And then I was well on track to do that until one of my dudes got shot down by the cruiser's own light AAA, which was poetic justice for me being a moron and leaving him there at the closest disadvantaged fighter.
I like that we got to use some of the markers and other tools that are new to us. Those hit trackers and the new barrage markers, they look pretty cool on the table.
Yeah, I liked those flak markers, Chris.
Those flak markers are sick, man.
Yeah, I like them.
As soon as I saw them, I was like, oh God, Doug, I gotta have these. I'm making you a set. They'll be on the way.
Exactly. I was afraid, based on the size that we were trying to change them to, they'd be a little fiddly. And so when I put that first set together, I'm like, man, I'm not sure how this is going to play, because you know how it is. I mean, everybody's damn airplanes are getting knocked around by themselves. But those markers seem to do well. And sure, you could always put some kind of weight under the base, but they're such light acrylic, they don't topple over. They're not off balance or anything, and they're the exact right size. So.
Oh, it's just the way they look. I mean, I've seen some amazing things done in acrylic, like the little burning markers for vehicles, to mark them with the little flames on top that you showed me. I know you're the Litgo man, but that is got to be one of the coolest effects. The little brown cloud with the little orange freaking flames shooting out of the side of it. I mean,
I'm such a fanboy for Litco, and I don't know how to say it any other way, because I'm an acrylic addict, and the quality of stuff that Ken and his team up there have put out it looks cool. It's most of them are fairly easy to assemble. Some of them are a little fiddly, but man, they just look so cool on the battlefield. And you can get some huge ones for 28 mil scales to put on top of a tank for it to smoke out. You know?
Well, it made me, the one thing I kept thinking of when I looked at the flak marker, because of the way flak works, I was just like, I just wish there was a game where you needed to track grenade explosions. Because imagine that in 28 mil is a grenade explosion, you know, and you're putting it in the middle of the guys and you got these little orange flames sticking out in this big freaking, oh God, it just, Litko is a bomb.
Well, me being the war criminal I am, I was sitting there looking at it and realizing that they would make nice shake and bake markers. So if you're out there shooting Willie Pete and frag, that'd be pretty nice.
It's a little thing, but I'm a big fan now of the high-vis Leyden markers because I find I lose those damn things anyway, but the high-vis ones are perfectly sized and are easy to spot.
Yeah, that was a good lesson learned, was that we'd produced these kind of lower vis ones, but on the map and with, you know, aircraft bases and everything else, the fluorescent green ones really kind of kicked ass because we'd never lose them.
It almost made me think that I want to put like a magnet on the base of the bombers so that you got a place to stick that freaking Leyden marker so it doesn't like flip around. I mean, that's going to the extreme, but I thought that would be something that even if you didn't put another, you know, magnet, just kind of like you do when you're doing weapon swaps for 30K and 40K models, where you just put a piece of freaking paper clip in there for the magnet to bond to. That would be perfect, just so that they're stuck to it and you don't have to worry about it. Of course, I could get off my butt and paint the perfectly magnetized torpedoes that Steve freaking sent me for my 79s, but
I can shoot all my torpedoes off my 79s and just pull them right off. Thanks, Steve. You're
I'm
the
just
best.
so glad I did the freaking torpedo squadron freaking paint job and got Kevin to do me special freaking decals for it, because that
I hate
made it
all of
that
you.
much better.
Steve Toth, I hate you.
They look even better in person than in the photographs. Isn't that always the case? I mean,
oh God,
they
stuff
looked
looks
awesome.
so good on the table. Just having. I mean, those freaking hurricanes that Trevor did were gorgeous. In fact, the first thing I did was like, dude, paint recipe, please. Tell me exactly how you did it, because the weathering on that camouflage on the hurricanes is some of the best. It just looks like...
Boy, it was tough, wasn't it? As Trevor told you, that was a lot of work.
Yeah. He's
Start
like,
with
oh,
Middlestone
dude.
and dark green.
It's like Agrax, dude.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, holy shit.
I was laughing when he and I talked about as we were putting together the paint scheme. He said, "What do you want?" I'm like, "Hey man, it needs to be the same stuff that I use. That if the only difference is the wash, I'm cool with that. But otherwise, tone-wise, everything needs to be the same as what I'm doing." So we went out, we picked the Vallejo colors, and of course, Middlestone's always the hardest one to find. You're like, fuck me, why do I have to order a whole box just to get this one stupid desert tone? But you know, having those and having obviously my unfortunately somewhat glossy Spitfire Mark Vs, because I haven't put the decals on them yet. But it was pretty cool to have them out there with both the same paint schemes.
Dude, I was just glad to get the 202s on the table, and they flew the way I thought they were going to fly. It was neat using one of our created ace cards, using an airplane that we freaking built the card for. It was just, you know, it was just, everything came together. So,
the
map.
Those are a great value, I think.
Oh,
I think they're way undercosted.
They're way undercosted. Way undercosted.
So, Andy, if you're listening,
I'm the first one to admit it. I'm the first one to admit it.
Yeah, Lead Pursuit was to change the C202 card.
Yeah,
they were awesome though. But I think they were a great airplane, and it was fun to fight against them. I just think point value for point value, I'm like, holy crap, where's the bad part of it? And once again, some of it is scenario dependent, because there are ways that you would do the setup that you could say, okay, I can see how if I'm playing bounced or some of these other scenarios, they might be a detractor. But in this scenario, going toe to toe with Spitfires, with Mark Vs at least, they were fun.
Well, I think a lot of it just came down to the fact that you were spread out trying to do, you know, you were doing the Lord's work in about 8 different directions. So
yeah, well, it's tough in that kind of a scenario.
Tyranny of freaking oh my God, the second I shoot this guy, somebody else is behind me. And that was the only reason I got behind you that first time, is you were trying to get those 87s, and freaking I just,
which was
timing wise, just rolled in right behind you.
Terrible decision to shoot for the 87s, who had nearly zero chance of damaging the cruiser. But you learn when you play through the ground attack rules that some of these targets are a lot harder to hit. And if you listen to people who have only played against convoys and maybe even tank columns. They're like, oh man, everything's easy to kill in airstrike. Oh no, it ain't. Oh no, it ain't.
Oh no, we tried. I mean, what did we put? What do we have on the board, Brett? We had 6 87s, 4 88s, 3 88s, and 3 79s with torpedoes, and we didn't sink it. We put 2 torpedoes into it, but
it was a destroyer, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a destroyer.
Oh, that's right. It was a destroyer, not a cruiser. You're right. Yep. It's a destroyer.
And that's one of the things I realized too. Is like, oh man, I need to get some more ground. So I'm kind of on a hunt for some new ground target models because I have some freighters.
Because Brett doesn't have enough.
And I have bridges and a factory and an airfield, but I don't have tanks or trucks or artillery positions or a cruiser or destroyer. So I'm gonna get those.
It was so cool having the British stuff to park in the harbor. And the way they did that map,
that's what I was going to say. It was even
sub pins,
even stuff that we didn't play with was cool to have on the board.
Yep, it just made it feel as you were rolling in on the harbor to have real stuff anchored. 3-dimensional freaking little ships that were anchored in the harbor, or little freighters that are moving around in the bay, even though they have no play in the gameplay. There's just this freaking bird's eye view of that freaking movement that makes it just look so freaking epically real, especially when you've got a map like the guys in Russia turned out for us. It is just, Brett, I mean, that thing is just insane.
Well, the scale on those 1 to 2,400 ships was almost perfect. I think they're a little larger than scale for the map, but not enough that it's distracting. I mean, it looked like they fit right in.
They're actually twice the size. So it's kind of funny because I went through and I was talking about it with one of the guys in the ready room, and we picked to about 1 to 5,000 to be the scale of the map itself, and then doubling the size of the targets to 1 to 2,400 for some of the ships made it pretty good, I think.
I think that's an ideal size when you consider like the traffic jam. If you want your targets to be roughly the size of the cards that are in the airstrike book, like a 3x5 card maybe, those are going to fit in that kind of footprint.
Well, I can see doubling the scale if guys went to like 1 to 1,200th or so on the ships. I can see that for at least the art value, because at least then you're putting more paint on your ships and you're getting some detailed models. I think those that would be an acceptable scale, is I guess what I should say. But I think after a while, like you indicate, I mean, you're going to have a carrier that's now 7 inches long.
Yeah, I think we had those little ships in there. If I'm not mistaken, I think the carriers we have so far, they're probably about 4 inches long, maybe 5 inches long.
I think
like that.
I think they're about 3.5 to 4 inches.
Yeah, they're pretty small. I mean, the ones that I got from GHQ in that scale are pretty small. So I got all of the Midway carriers. I haven't built any of them yet, but just looking at them comparatively to Blood Red Skies airplanes is like, oh, those things are pretty tiny. But I got to say this too, Brett. The ships that you did, the paint schemes you put on them were amazing, and then those flight deck decals that were on the British carrier, those things are just wicked. They add such a level of finish to such a tiny model that it just having those painted freaking deck lines, it just makes that little teeny tiny model look like, wow, that's a great looking carrier.
Yeah, it makes a real difference. The Yorktown I did with those, that just enhances it so much with those decals. So highly recommended.
Yeah, I ordered those for all of the Midway carriers for the U.S. and for the Japanese, and the decal sheets, they're just gorgeous. I can't wait to put them together. I just haven't had the time.
The one thing I will say that's really an advantage of the smaller scale ships, and we'll talk about Midway here in in about a week or so. The fact that there were a couple times that dive bombers were setting up for attacks, and they were like, well, do I attack this cruiser, or do I attack what I think is a destroyer over there, or I'm going to watch the other dive bomb squadron attack the carrier? And that if you have really big ship models, you can't do that, because then all of a sudden you're playing on an 8-foot table. But if you have reasonable sized ship models, you can put them the required mile to a mile and a half, 2 miles apart in game scale. And so they can be, 9 to 12 inches apart or something like that. And it allows the bombing player to have to make a decision. And it isn't just that I fly to a point in space and I attack any ship within 6 inches. It's like, okay, if I'm going to go attack these cruisers, I have to fly an extra turn in a different direction and exposed to the fighters and the flak and everything else. So I think it's cool for that scale.
Yeah, about that size, it's good. Nobody's going to, you're not going to have any exploits with range distances and stuff,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what else have you guys been working on? I know there's a lot of stuff that's come out from Warlord that we've been drooling over. A lot of discussion about the JU-88s coming out, JU-88Cs. Brett, I'm surprised you don't have a set of those already sitting in your inbox.
Well, not yet, because, really my collection so far is all early war. I haven't even started getting into more late war stuff. So, we're talking JU-88Cs, if I'm not mistaken, are like night fighters, really doing the defense of the Reich, shooting down bombers, right? So that's the only reason. It's just because I've been so focused on Malta and Battle of Britain and now Stalingrad from my collection and stuff I've painted up. I just haven't gotten to those yet, but I think they're super cool. I can't wait to get my hands on them.
Yeah, there'll be some nice ground attack missions that you can do with some of those. And Chris, your PE2s and those are out there.
I've got 2 of the AIM PE2s, which I really, really enjoyed building. But I will say just some models have wonky bits on them, and the rudder sections, the tail sections on the PE2s from AIM, they're just really hard to work with. They're super thin resin. There's a lot of mold lines on them, and they're kind of painful. And I'm just really hoping that one little kink's worked out, because of what I'm going to do is, I'll be honest, I'm just going to order the Ace model, Maria Delonia, and I'm gonna look at that model, and then if it looks better than the AIM models, I'll be buying freaking 6 of them without a doubt and redoing all the paint jobs.
It's a box of 6, isn't it? It's not
a box of 6.
Like you're getting a box of 3 again. You're getting a box of 6.
You're getting 6
I didn't know that.
PE2s. Yes,
yeah.
6 PE2s.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
so
so you've got enough PE2s. When you're talking airstrike, you're talking 3 on table max. You could actually, when you add the Ace in there, so now you got 2 different paint schemes you could run. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, well, that's like the 110s. Don't make this mistake I did. Get all 6 of your 110s and paint them all in the same scheme. Because when you ever gonna field 6 110s on the board?
Well, that's what I did with the Mossies when I got them. I painted 2 Mossies in one squadron, 2 Mossies in another squadron, 2 Mossies in another squadron. I was like, I'm just not going to run ever that many of them from the same squadron on the table at one time.
Or we could do like I did and just get multiple boxes. Just, whenever you paint them, just paint the whole box for the entire squadron every time you do it. I've done
because, ladies and gentlemen, Brett has a problem.
Yes.
Oh, dude, looking at Brett's freaking German, it's like the Und Ja cabinet. It is just gorgeous. Looking at the stuff that's in there, man. When you see all that stuff together, and then when I went down the stairs, you were like, I can't remember what I was going downstairs. You told me to go downstairs to the paint room to get something. I went down there, and there's that freaking B-29 you were working on that was on the table, and I'm like, immediately my eyes are drawn to that freaking night camo pattern. You've got the circles on the bottom. I'm just like, oh, dude, that looks so sick. Those things are really coming along good.
I think my favorite model so far is still a 110. I have a single recce version I did that Kevin made custom. He made a custom sheet for me with just recce Recon 110 decals, and it's probably it's only one. I have one painted this particular scheme, but it's still my favorite.
Yeah, I think there's so many different schemes you can do anyway that it gets kind of funny whether you say, all right, I'm just gonna buy something in a box of 6, because even with Warlord resin, it's not crazy expensive. We'll see how the prices hold for the rest of the year as things go up. But the nice thing is, at least the rumor is the resin MiG-15s, the resin F-86s are going to come out in customizable size packs. So when you order them off the website, you can say, I want 2, I want 4, I want 6, and they'll give you the right number of pilot discs and everything kind of in those pre-done packs. And it should be the same for the F9 Panthers. So hopefully, at least we'll have some of these Korea era jets no longer in white metal, all in resin and in customizable batches.
Yeah, it was a great thing about the Air Museum the other day, too. They've got an entire Korea wing that's just Korea. And some of the airplanes that were in there, it was just amazing to walk around. I had seen, the airplane on a stick Crusaders before at multiple bases, but, seeing a Shooting Star and seeing some of these other airplanes that just are not common to see out there, it was neat to be up close to those aircraft. And a couple B-29s. It was just amazing.
Do they have any F-84s? I want to get Doug interested in those.
I think I'm trying.
I'm sure they have one. It's filed under a turd with wings. Can I want to make it. It's not a Jet 1. It's a Jet .5.
Yeah, I was looking for a Meteor just so I could post it for all the Brit guys. There's
exactly.
we actually got one of these. It was like, nah, there was no tech in it we wanted, so it's not here.
I still laugh because I saw photos of a U.S. painted Meteor at one point, but there's a lot of photos of U.S. painted Mossies. So the funny part is there's a number of mosquitoes that the Army Air Force said, hey, we need some of those, and flew them. So there's a number of Brit planes we've grabbed over the time.
Well, that was the thing I was kind of interesting about the World War II Museum is they've got several Spitfires there, and they're all painted in American colors. I just felt that kind of odd, and they were explaining why they did that because there were people different base commanders that helped Wright-Patterson build the museum that were actually flew this airplane before they flew another one, and they painted in that livery, and I'm like, I get that, but
because we're the Americans.
It's
we're
an
going to take your
iconic
team.
British aircraft, and they didn't have a Hurricane; they had a Tiger Moth. I mean, and the Tiger Moth was at the end of the World War I freaking display. So, which I know it's kind of mid-war; it's in between the two, and it became a trainer by World War II. But it was just, I was just like, I was so wanted to see at least one Hurricane there. There just wasn't
not so much.
So it is a little lacking in that kind of regard. There's a lot of, and when you understand why Wright-Patterson is there and why the aircraft that specifically are Wright-Patterson are there, it's not because somebody started some amazing collection. It's because that's where we took it back and we tore it apart and we tested it.
Exactly.
That's how it all ended up there. When you look at it from that scenario, I can see why certain things are in the collection the way they are, but I would have liked to see just a little bit more of the Yukon Jack flying in that museum, especially on airplanes that were predominantly flown by those guys.
Yeah,
so I think that would have been a little bit more reasonable. I mean, they had a Recce Spitfire that was painted with American colors. I mean, I get it, but I'm just not thinking that happened a whole lot.
Yeah. We're going to take a temporary break, and I'll be right back. I need some more beer. And we're back, and we're going to continue to talk about playing Blood Red Skies, but most importantly, about Brett getting beat by his son, at least twice that I can think of. So tell us about Gavin's Spitfires.
Oh, so after everybody was over, right, Gavin saw us up there playing and everything, and he was asking me after you guys left, like, hey, you think I could play? I'm like, of course you could play. And I was really excited that he was really interested in it.
Of course you could play. I could give you Spitfires and you can beat me just like everybody else.
Yeah, pretty much. So, yeah, he's a cheater. He's officially a cheater. He wants the Spitfires.
Excellent.
I have a big book with all these trifold, fold outs of all the, real main players, World War II fighters and bombers from all the different factions. I said, here, chew on this. Tell me what you like. And he was drawn to all the RAF stuff. And I was showing him the Spitfires. He's like, wow, that's really cool. And he was funny. I said, well, those are really good in the game. And he's like, well, I want Spitfires, I want Mossies, I want Hurricanes. Like he had like a whole like shopping list in his head. I was like, hold on, let's start with the Spitfires you like and go from there. So that's where we're at. We just took the mold lines off today, and he hasn't been able to see the joy of the tight turn card yet. But we've just been playing some really basic games without cards. But I think he's going to be pretty happy.
Dude, after playing with my 202s with a tight turn and then rolling in and playing 109s versus Spitfires, and oh God, like I said, I felt like I was in a freaking knife fight in a phone booth and I had a baseball bat.
Well, at least you'd read the rules, so that was us moving up in the world from our usual games.
Yeah, exactly. But that is just so cool that freaking Gavin is playing, man. That is just, he's such a neat kid.
Well, the cool thing is the game is pretty straightforward. It's not super complex, and so it's got mechanics that kids can pick up on, and you don't have to play it with all the ace cards and theater and doctrine and all that stuff. It's still just a lot of fun to push the miniatures around just with the basic information that's on the cards, even with no traits.
Yeah, I gotta make sure I'm careful about letting the Wookiee win. I want to make sure he continues to have a good time until he feels really confident with the game. So it's it's been a good time. We've played a couple of games.
Negative. Beat the crap out of him early. Make him cry. That's how we were all raised as war gamers.
Yeah.
No, there was an interesting discussion about that on a couple different podcasts about how do you demo a game and how do you get people to not necessarily master the game, but at least have played through a bunch of the mechanics. And there's an element of you sometimes got to let them win a little bit. It's not that you so much throw the game, but you're like, ooh, I'm not going to just totally smash them for that mistake they've made. I'm going to let it go to kind of its logical conclusion, which, as we've seen, sometimes that means the game takes a lot longer. But, it's probably more fun for them and brings them back to play the game again.
Yeah, little things I've been trying to do. Like I'm pointing out to him like what diving is and, all that. But I won't do it. I'll only go my max distance. Sometimes I'll intentionally not go my max distance, but I won't dive. I won't add, I don't do anything complicated. I won't, when I have the option to turn in, I won't turn in, so that, just kind of gives him a little more opportunity for setups to see if he sees the combinations. And he's managed a tailing solution at least once or twice. So he's seeing how it works. So it's kind of cool.
Well, cool. Well, what else have you guys seen, or what else do we want to talk about in this 40th episode, our 1-year anniversary, as we kick this whole thing off again?
Man, I haven't been doing any painting because I've been in total heads down display mode on this campaign thing. But I have recently finished really all the actual text work, and that's all sort of like proofing and editing, and maybe adding in some little artwork and whatever. So maybe we'll have something to show with that soon.
That's pretty cool. Chris, anything else?
Yeah, to be honest, I've just been getting back up here and getting reaccustomed to everything and figuring out everything that needed to be done. I haven't done any Blood Red Sky stuff. I did start getting paint on a Warhound Titan today, so which has been that's my next big project.
We don't care about 30K.
I know we don't. I
actually didn't bring any this time. I kind of.
I didn't bring any 30K either. It was kind of like, I'm going to go and we're going to play Blood Red Skies. I'm going to play Blood Red Skies all the time, and that was cool.
I know, that was the funny thing. I didn't bring that or Dust the last time. I literally just brought down Blood Red Skies, and there was enough of that, and I've got enough projects there.
No, I mean, I think it worked out perfect this time. It was just immerse ourselves in Blood Red Skies. I was totally cool with that. I've had a bug because I've been listening to the last couple of Horus Heresy novels the last couple of weeks, and it's just been the new Dan Abnett book has been so good. God,
my Space Marines are there on Terra. They're fighting the siege of Terra.
I had to get back to him. I got talking with Trevor. We started talking Space Marine stuff, and I was just like, I gotta paint some Heresy stuff. I gotta take a little break from World War II.
No, you admit it. You wanted to paint Tau. You wanted to do some 40K.
I think that was the one thing me and Trevor agreed on, is that we don't hate anything more than we hate Tau. So, I mean, right up there with Imperial Fist for me. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no worries, man. That's easy. No big deal. Freaking sucker. Well, it's funny. So have you at least cracked open Corsair Leader since you made it home? Since you didn't bring it down?
I have looked over a Corsair Leader again, and at
you get an F.
Dude, I know. I want to play it so bad, but it's just like I've got 500 things going on. It's like
it takes like an hour to play a game.
I've watched all the tutorials online, and I mean, it doesn't look, it looks like it's something that's really enjoyable, really easy to set up. And I just need to bring myself to the point where I just punch it all out and freaking go for it.
Yeah, exactly. You just have to play through a sample turn. Brett, you played Phantom Leader while we were there, or you watched as we kind of went through a turn in Phantom Leader. What'd you think of that, just kind of from the 30,000-foot view?
No, I liked it, and this is weird to say, but it had like a certain kind of nostalgia, too. I mean, I don't know if that's the right word, but you know what I mean? It's just the setting was cool, the whole Vietnam thing. Maybe it's topical because we've been talking a lot about, Vietnam with the playtesting and everything else. So I liked it. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, I brought Hornet Leader here with me on my trip, so I'll be playing through that a little bit. But I pretty much already spent my birthday money on a couple different games. I picked up Red Storm, which is a super complex, not quite to the Air War level, but like an operational air mission game for a hypothetical war in Germany in the 1980s. Seems pretty cool, and I picked it up because it was kind of bigger scale than what we've been doing at Blood Red Skies. It's whole strike packages, different kinds of aircraft, doing stuff in the modern era. So we'll see how that goes. And then I totally went off the aerial game bandwagon and picked up Undaunted North Africa. And I don't know if you guys have seen the the previous Undaunted game that's out there. But it's kind of cool because it's got a combo of rearrangeable tiles, cards to keep track of your forces, and then a variety of different characters and vehicles and all kinds of stuff. So I'm kind of interested to play that for a small skirmish level, squad level game. It seems like it'd be pretty cool. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate both of you coming on tonight, celebrating our 1-year anniversary of doing this, and no one's fired us yet. So thanks to the Blood Red Skies community for putting up with us. Brett, Chris, thanks for being on tonight. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah, man.